Hello friends. So yeah, we have completed like till PF22. Last session we completed about the service provider versus identity provider initiated as SSO. Right now we are jumping to relay state. Right. So maybe you heard this word like in the SAML like or in the single sign-on area, right? Relay state about. So we'll try to understand what is exactly relay state, what exactly it does, right, and whether we can able to configure this parameter in PingFederate or not. Those all things we can just cover. And again, like for testing part, we need to wait. For relay state also we can do some testing. I'll just show you something exactly what is relay state, how you can pass that value, and yeah, those all testing we can do in the PF25, right, in the SAML application onboarding. In SAML application onboarding we can just cover, as I told you in the last session also, we are going to cover all those testing. Whatever the things we created, we are going to test that. Apart from that also, we can just look into few other options also of PingFederate, right? Like for example, how we can just directly just by using IDP URL, how we can go to some, if for an example, if I onboard an application, right, and if I have multiple consumer URL configured for SAML application, so how I can navigate to different consumer URL, right? And there are a few other things also we can, as I told about relay state, right? So we can talk on all those things, and maybe I cover a few other things also, right? So that session will definitely be longer, more than 60 minutes or like 1 hour 30 minutes, but that is fine. Like we can just go for those testing and all in a single video, right? We'll not create some part of that video, right? So yeah, let's quickly begin and just yeah, we can discuss on relay state. Yeah, so let's begin. Okay. Yeah, so what is relay state? Before going for relay state, let's talk about few things of SAML, right? So SAML is an asynchronous protocol by design. So what is meaning of asynchronous? Basically it's a non-blocking architecture. That's why we called SAML as a asynchronous protocol. And what is the meaning of non-blocking architecture? So basically it means that it refers to the program that doesn't block the execution of further operation. That means if any other operation is going on, so it will not block that. That's the meaning of non-blocking architecture, and SAML is one of that. Okay. Now let's discuss about the SP initiated sign-in flow that we discussed in the previous session. So the service provider initiated sign-in flow begins by generating a SAML authentication request that gets redirected to the IDP, as you can see, right? At this point, the service provider doesn't store any information about the request. That means you have a SP, you have IDP, and here you have the browser, and here is the user. User went to the browser, then to the SP. SP generated a SAML authentication request sent to the browser and then to the IDP. So at this time, the SP does not store any information about the request. This is a request, right? SAML authentication request. So SP at this time, SP doesn't store any information. When the SAML response, that basically SAML response comes from the IDP, basically comes back from the IDP, then the service provider would not know anything about the initial deep link that triggered the authentication request. Basically it means that like in this flow, like as the SP just said, this redirected a user to browser then to the IDP. At this time it is not storing any information. So after authentication, when IDP send a response to the service provider, at that time SP is basically would not able to find anything about the initial deep link, that the initial custom URL which basically redirected a user to the IDP. So it's not having any information, the SP, because it's not storing anything exactly what is triggering the authentication request. Now for the solution of this, like SAML support this with a parameter called relay state. So now relay state is going to help here. How? You understand this part, right? That SP is not storing anything at the initial when it sends the request to the IDP, right? Now how relay state is helping? So a relay state is an HTTP parameter that you can include as part of the SAML request and response. I'll show you that like in one of the example. Like we can try to access a SP initiated application, and right now I haven't onboarded, but randomly I can just pick some application for any company, and I'll show you that how that SAML authentication request initiated and how the relay state parameter is getting passed. So that's what it says, that a relay state is an HTTP parameter that you can include as part of the SAML request and response. Right? In the request also, in the response also. In an SP initiated sign-in flow, the service provider can set the relay state parameter in the SAML request with additional information about the request. Like in the SAML request, you are passing something, right? The data, the authentication contact, SAML subject, binding and all. So along with that, it can just attach the relay state parameter. Now after receiving the SAML request, the SAML IDP attaches the relay state value as an HTTP parameter in the SAML response after the user authentication complete. This way, when the round trip completes, the SP can use that relay state information to get more context about the initial SAML authentication request. That means what happened, that user went to the browser, from browser to the SP is generating the SAML authentication request. Along with that, it is attaching a relay state parameter and sending back to the IDP. IDP just doing the validation of the user, generating a SAML response, attaching that same relay state parameter, sending back to the SP from the browser. Now in this complete round trip, using relay state information, SP can get more context about the initial SAML authentication request, right? Which basically without relay state, you can't imagine how SP can't able to find that, how exactly the authentication is getting triggered. So you understand this part, correct? Now what else thing you can achieve using relay state? So so basically in the case of deep link, I'll say, like the custom URL through which basically you are redirecting a user to the IDP. So in the case of deep link, the SP, the service provider, sets the relay state as we have seen in this example, right? So in the case of deep link, the service provider can set the relay state along with the SAML request with the deep link value. Now when the SAML response is returned from the IDP side along with that relay state value, so what it will do, basically SP can use that relay state value and take the authenticated user to the right resource. That means like the user is just same example, right? User is going to the browser, then to the SP generated the SAML authentication request and passing a relay state parameter. What relay state parameter is doing here? So this complete thing, SAML authentication plus relay state sent to the browser to the IDP validated the user, generated the SAML response, attached the same relay state. So SAML response plus relay state sent back to the SP. Now what SP will do with this value of relay state? It can just take the authenticated user to the right resource. That means once authentication done using relay state, you can take the resource to the correct place. So relay state can help in that part also. So for example, authentication is done. So now you can redirect a user to a particular address using that relay state value. That's what it states, right? So in the case of a deep link, the SP sets the relay state of the SAML request with the deep link value. Now when the SAML response is returned, the SP can use the relay state value and take the authenticated user to the right resource. You understand, right? The same relay state value passed from SP to IDP just not modifying anything, just passing the same relay state parameter. And now what SP is doing with that relay state value, it can just taking the user to the right resource. That means just redirecting a user or just moving the user to the particular place using that relay state value after authentication is done, after receive the SAML response back from the IDP. So that is another use. You understand? So that's basically there are two things we understand here, that initially SP is not storing any information about the SAML authentication request. So for that relay state, by using relay state, you can SP can able to get more context about that. Another thing is that you can just pass that parameter along with the SAML request. You will get the same value of once the IDP will send the response. And then using that SAML relay state value, the service provider can basically take the authenticated user to the right resource. So these are two things you can achieve using relay state. Now in this SP initiated flow, what is happening? Like user is going to the browser, then to the SP. Now SP is basically generating this relay state, adding the relay state parameter along with the SAML request. So in this case, in the SP initiated flow, IDP is not going to change anything with the relay state, because it just going to receive the IDP, just going to receive the SAML authentication request. IDP can see, okay, the SAML request came plus the relay state. So IDP will do, it will just read the SR value and the relay state value, authenticate the user, validate the user, get generated a SAML response, and then along with the SAML response, just add the same relay state without doing any modification. Okay, IDP will not modify any relay state, this relay state parameter in the case of SP initiated. and just send this two parameter as SR SAML response plus relay state to the browser and then to the SP. Then SP will consume that, and then yeah, as I told that it can just take the relay state value for getting more context about the authentication source, or maybe take the user to the right resource as per the whatever the SP is looking for. But this is basically the use of relay state. There are two things what we understand. One, storing the information about the authentication triggering, and second thing, like yeah, by using that you can just take the user to a particular place or resource after authentication is completed, or once you receive the SAML response from the IDP. Now you can ask that how we can then use this value in the IDP initiated flow. So what is happening in IDP? So what is happening in IDP, that you have a SP, correct, and you have the IDP, and then you have the browser. So in the case of IDP initiated flow, as I told, the SSO journey will start from the IDP end. So here is the user will go to the browser and then to the IDP. Now in this case you can see that like user is not going to pass any parameter here. It's just trying to use the IDP initiated URL. That means your journey start from the IDP. IDP is just going to validate the user, then complete the authentication of the user, generate the SAML response, and send back to the SP. What we understand in the IDP initiated. Then how IDP can able to pass the relay state parameter in the IDP initiated flow. So in that case, like if you have the IDP initiated flow only, that means your journey is started from the PingFed IDP end only. In that case, there is no any option, or there is no any place where you can just go and add the relay state parameter in the configuration. Rather than what you can do, in the URL itself, you can add a query parameter like a target resource. Like you have the IDP initiated URL, using that, in that URL itself you can add that query parameter of target resource equal to something, whatever the relay state value, and that can be passed in the SAML response, like SAML response plus relay state. So this is the way you can pass in the IDP initiated flow also. You're not configuring this anywhere in the PingFederate, but in the URL itself, when user is basically hitting that, in that URL itself you are attaching a query parameter of the relay state value, and then you are passing to the SP, so that the SP can get these two value like SR SAML response along with the relay state. So maybe they can just consume that if they want that relay state value, right? So in the case of IDP also you can use in this way, but in the case of SP you are simply getting, so IDP is not doing anything, it basically getting that value, just passing the same thing back to the SP. But in the case of IDP you can do this, but not via configuration, just by adding that in the URL. I'll show you that also. Right, so this is about this IDP case. So I'll just quickly just let's jump to the application flows, SAML flow. I'll show you where the relay state parameter, and then we can just as I talk in the IDP initiated, how we can just use this. Okay, yeah. So let's quickly go to the like our machine VM, and let me show you the relay state first. Let me enable the SAML tracer. I'll show you how we can add, like in the testing, just like it's the extension, you can directly search in the browser, and you can just able to add this extension, and you can able to trace the SAML request response. So I'll just try to access some application, like take an example, randomly I put like Philips .service -now.com. I'm generally putting like general URL, and I think it should be like it can take us to a login page. Yeah, that's why service now address of the Philips. So I can able to reach the login page. That means this is the identity provider, and it looks like maybe that company is using the Azure AD as an identity provider. So but yeah, our intention is to look on relay state parameters. Let me open this SAML tracer and I'll show you. You can see that here we have the SAML request came here. This is a SAML authentication request. So we have these parameters as I talk, right? Maybe again, like in the application onboarding session, we can just definitely go for each and everything, what are all these values, what exactly these values are doing, what is this ID, force authentication, destination, consumer URL. Maybe you have some idea. I think we already talked about the session consumer URL, but yeah, again we can talk about all those things, like what all these address, like you can see protocol binding, provider name, assertion, like issuer, who is basically issuing this request. Then we have the format of the SAML name ID format. So those all things basically, like this company is sending to the identity provider, like this service provider is sending to the Azure AD here. It looks to the identity provider, and this is a SAML request. Now where we have the relay state, so now just go to the parameter section, then you can see the relay state value. So you can see you have the relay state here, that is HTTPS some address of the application address. So this is the relay state parameter. They are basically attaching along with SAML request and then sending to the identity provider like the Azure AD. Now Azure AD is handling their authentication and then just going to send the response along with this relay state parameter plus the SAML response. Now what this service provider will do, they will simply consume the response and they will just redirect the user to this particular write resource. That is what is the write resource here? The relay state parameter. So once the authentication is done, once the response came to the application, then the application will just take the user to this write resource, means take the user to this this address what is basically coming in this relay state. So we know, right, in relay state we have two things. One is basically you are able to store the information, more context, that the application get more context using relay state, that how the authentication is getting triggered. For example, here I basically access this application, and application take me to the Azure AD identity provider page. So how this triggered happening? So using relay state they can capture, or they can use a relay state like just to take the user like to a right place. That means like once SP can just, so you can see in this case what is happening, this is a SP initiated SSO flow. Okay, so here application is basically just generating a SAML request, sending to the particular endpoint address of the IDP along with this relay state parameter. Now the IDP, basically Azure AD, is going to handle the authentication. Post authentication it will generate a SAML response along with the same relay state. It's not going to change anything, as I told you in that relay state flow also. So just going to use the same relay state plus SAML response and then going to send that to the application. Now application will simply just take the response and take the user to a write resource, means to this place whatever the relay state value is coming. Okay, this is one thing. This is basically an example of SP initiated flow. Now as we just talked that how we are going to, like, let me close this. Let me close this tracer also. Yeah, so now we talked about like how we can just add a relay state, or how we can just see the relay state in the case of IDP initiated SSO flow. So I told you that in the IDP initiated there is no any option in the PingFed where you can just add the relay state, but you can add that as a query parameter in the IDP initiated URL to pass the relay state parameter to the application. Like I'll show you that. Let's quickly go and log into the PingFederate 10.128.0.3 and we have 999/PingFederate/app. Okay, let me go to advanced. Okay, I logged in. Now you can see that, like, if I just we have one test application. So if I just get this connection to open, yeah, so we have this application. So this is basic, this is called an IDP initiated URL. That means if you just use this URL, that means you are directly coming to PingFederate, your authentication is happening, then PingFed is going to send the response to the application. Application is here, partner SPID means partner service provider ID. So test app is the application. So PingFederate after authentication going to send the response to test app. So now if I can just simply access this URL, this IDP initiated SSO URL, let me go to incognito window. I'll open the SAML tracer. Just want to show you. So if I just access this URL, here you will not see any SAML request. So you can see, let me proceed here. So I'll get a login page, right? So that means user just went to PingFederate. PingFed verifies, okay, this connection is registered with at my configuration end, and whatever the authentication mechanism set for this application, I'll give the login page. So that's why same login page triggered here. There is no authentication request, just as a URL with the partner SP ID test app, and this is the base URL or the DNS URL, you can say, of the PingFederate. Now here, let's just put the user ID password to complete our authentication. Let me click on sign on. Yeah, so that means yeah, this is sending to the test1.com because it's configured. That's the assertion address, assertion consumer service URL address configured in the PingFederate. That's why PingFederate sent the response to this address. Okay, now if I can just go here, this is a SAML response. We are not having any authentication request, but we have the SAML response. That means user went to the PingFederate, PingFed verifies the user and then send that user to the application address space, that is https test1.com. So if you can see, this is a http post call, and so we have the http post binding, and using that we are just sending this response. So you can see all those parameters you can see here, like the SAML issuer, who issued the request, where basically destination address and other values, right? Like you can see the attribute values. Like if you can go to summary, you can able to get the details, like what are the session value, if there is any certificate embedded, or like the who issuing this request. So these are the values basically, like you can see in this IDP initiated flow. This is just like a same, but your journey started from the PingFederate. That means there is no any authentication request. You are simply just going to PingFederate and saying PingFederate, hey PingFederate, I just want to access like this test1.com. So PingFederate just verify that okay, this application is configured with me. So just given you the authentication page as per the design. So you just put your ID password, gets your authentication complete, then PingFederate generate this SAML token and send back to the application test1.com. Now here you can see there is no any relay state parameter. Here you have the SAML response only. No, there is no any relay state parameter, because we haven't configured anywhere in PingFederate, and also we haven't passed that query parameter as I told. So it's a blank, right? It's just you have the SAML response. Now if you have the requirement that you want to pass a relay state in the case of IDP initiated SSO flow also, then what you can do, like let's quickly discuss that. Let me close this and we can try again. So you have this IDP initiated. So what you can do, just use this. Let's go back to the incognito window. Let's open Tracer. So as I told you, you have the IDP initiated SSO URL. Here you can just pass a query parameter like target resource, and you can add some value here that will basically pass as a relay state value. So you can put target resource is equal to something https abc.xyz.com. okay, like this. Let's try to enter now. Click on advance, go to it, will just give you an authentication page. What happened? The reference number below to help locate and correct the problem. Okay, some unexpected system error came. Why? Target resource equals to something. Yeah. Just a second, let me check this. Okay, I think like I just made some mistake here. It should not be as a query. It should be like a and. We need to put ampersand here. Like you have the IDP URL, and it should be like and target resource equal to something that will pass as a relay state, not like with the query question mark something. Okay, so let me try to click on enter now. Okay, we are getting a login page. Let me put my ID and password. Yeah, this is a kind of troubleshooting also we did here right now. So yeah, maybe once you start doing the things, maybe you can definitely see more problems, but yeah, we can overcome those. So now we can see that yeah, the response we have sent to the application. Now let's see whether the relay state parameter has been passed in the SAML response or not. So here we have the SAML response. So in the summary you can see the basic thing. Yeah, you have the response, assertion, and the certificates. In the SAML tab you can just able to see the complete XML payload with the digital signature value as per how you are just configured in the PingFederate. Now if you can go to the parameter section, then you can able to see the relay state. Just scroll up. Yeah, so you can see you have the relay state parameter here as https abc.xyz.com. So you can see that in the case of IDP initiated SSO flow also, you can pass this parameter in the response. But how you can pass? You're not supposed to configure this anywhere in PingFederate. You just need to embed that in the IDP initiated SSO URL. So you have this IDP initiated SSO URL. So here you are basically adding these two things. Like you have the complete IDP SSO initiated SSO URL. There you are basically just adding a and with ampersand target resource is equal to whatever the value you want to pass in the relay state. Based on that, PingFederate is going to send that in the relay state, and then application can just take that, and maybe if they want to just take the resource to a particular place, they can use this address as we understand the purpose of relay state, right? So it's not SP initiated, so maybe they cannot SP is not going to just trying to understand how the authentication triggered, because it's SP is not sending the request. It's a user directly just using the IDP initiated SSO URL. That means user directly going to the PingFederate, getting their authentication done, and then PingFederate basically just generating the SAML response and sending back to the application. So in this case, the first purpose of the relay state to store the information or get the more context about the authentication triggering, that is not required because it's not a SP initiated flow. Correct. So in the IDP, just like this is the flow, and you can pass the relay state in this way by using the and target resource. and you can use multiple things in PingFederate by using this and like we can just see in our testing like application onboarding section that we can add ACSE, or like for an example you have just configure application in PingFederate and you have 10 consumer URLs. So how PingFederate can navigate to all those consumer in the case of IDP initiated, because in case of SP, like again SP have some control. So if they can pass some index value or kind of assertion address in the request itself, then PingFed can understand, okay, this user is looking for this application, so just pass this value, like or basically just send the response to this address. But when in case of IDP, how PingFed can know where I need to send the response, because in my configuration I have 10 address configured, correct? So in that case, we can just see that how we can pass a parameter like and ACS IDX equal to something. So whatever index value we can put, PingFed can simply just send the response to that address only. Otherwise, if you're not notifying, it can just send the default. Default means the index value 0. Whatever the address configured at index value 0, it can send the response to that particular address. So that's the basically use in PingFederate by using and putting the parameter. So you can see that in that section. But yeah, this is about relay state. I hope you understand this. So let's jump to the next section and we can talk about metadata, and then we can jump to the application onboarding and testing session. Yeah, thank you.